So fun fact, there are a total of 934 moves in the main series Pokemon games. And you would think that that's perfectly enough for us competitive players to have fun with. But you're wrong, that's not enough. Because of those moves, only a very small percentage are actually useful in competitive play. So I'm going to be going over some moves that hypothetically could exist, and I'm going to talk about if they would actually be a good addition to the game in practice, or if it's just something cool in theory. So first off, credit where credit is due. Shout out to Ellie who commented Stealth Icicles on my video about the best move of every type. He was the reason that I came up with this idea in the first place. So shout out to the person with the worst profile picture that I have ever seen. Anyways, this is pretty straightforward. Stealth rocks, but make it ice type, because that's what we really need in competitive Pokemon. Not more physical fire type moves, not more physical electric type moves, but more hazards. Anyways, of course, Pokemon like flying types, dragon types, grass types, and ground types would be the ones that would be more hurt by this. It would be literally devastating considering that ice, in my opinion, is the best offensive typing. Hazards are a concept that can be annoying to deal with, but a necessary evil in the competitive Pokemon world, where switching is a pivotal aspect of the game. That is also technically present in VGC, but it's not as present, to my understanding that is, as games are much shorter. Hazards are one thing that are annoying, but they are part of legit strategies. Hazards prevent games from going on infinitely, and they prevent players from just switching in and out forever. So while I do think that they are necessary, I don't think we need more. And I don't think the types that I named that are weak to ice need to be nerfed more than they already are. It would nerf Pokemon like Garchomp and Landorus, similarly to what Stealth Rocks did to Charizard and Volcarona. Especially when you take into account that the ground type is one of the best types in competitive Pokemon, is really perfect in my opinion as it is. It's not too overpowered and it's not weak. I think that it's very balanced. In one of my last videos, I named Stealth Rocks as the best rock type move, and I think that it's a top 10 move in general in competitive Pokemon. And if Stealth Icicles was a move that existed, then I guaranteed it would be a close second to Stealth Rocks in regards to the top 10 moves in competitive singles. It would cause a huge shift in competitive in regards to what Pokemon are viable or not. So a cool move in theory, but it's really excessive in practice. Also, subscribe or Game Freak will give Toxapex packs called and knockoff. Source, my dad works at Nintendo. Next is willow-wisp, but for special attackers. Willow-wisp is another move. One of my last videos I named the best fire type move because it has a huge distribution, and once a physical attacker gets willow-wisp, he's cooked. And ever since I was younger and I started getting into competitive, I always found it unfair that there wasn't a special attacking version of this to balance the skills. This is one of the moves that I'm honestly surprised it doesn't exist. I don't see a logical reason for it not to, and since Willow-wisp is a fire type move and aimed towards physical attackers, I feel like this should be a water type move with the same accuracy and power points. As for the names, the heads up names is just not my strong suit at all. I thought something like Cold Current would be cool, but when I say it out loud, it just sounds really corny for some reason. The only reason I thought it would be cool because, I don't know, alliteration, but it's kind of lame. But anyways, as for Pokemon that would benefit from it, I guess mainly utility-oriented water-type Pokemon, but I do feel like it's rather necessary. So with so many stupidly powerful Pokemon being introduced in Gen 9, like Raging Bolt, I mean 137 special attack stat for OU is kind of crazy. I think that it would be really good to, I guess, ease the pressure of the offense power creep. However, I don't feel like they would introduce a move like this one since they already nerfed utility-oriented moves in Generation 9 with the distribution, so I don't think that they would add another one that falls into the similar category. I don't even know why a move like this hasn't been introduced at this time. I thought, well, at first, Pokemon really only cares about VGC, not singles, so maybe Willow-wisp isn't viable in VGC, but then I thought about it a little bit more and I was like, no, it is viable actually, so I don't really understand. It's kind of interesting that physical attackers are nerfed more than special attackers. Maybe nerfed is not the best move, but what I mean is like items like Rocky Helmets and abilities like Intimidate keep physical attackers in check so they're not too overpowered. I don't know why exactly this is, because I wouldn't say that physical attackers are more powerful than special attackers in general. I don't know. The closest explanation that I have isn't one necessarily linked to competitive Pokemon, it's more thematic, and it's that it should technically be easier and have more ways to stop someone who's punching you rather than someone that's using, I don't know, telekinesis. But I don't know, that's just a theory.
A game theory!
Moving on, freeze-dry, but for different types. Freeze-dry is an amazing move, however, it has terrible distribution. Only 30 Pokemon know the move freeze-dry, and only 4 of those Pokemon are actually good, because the others either suck or are physical attackers like Excalibur. But it's a great concept. Obviously, it's super effective against water types with a 30% chance to freeze. It's only fair that dragon types get their own version. Dragon types have really been nerfed ever since the introduction of the fairy types. They're now no longer an offensive powerhouse like they used to be, since you can't just straight up spam Draco Meteor all day. Since again, they're completely immune to dragon type moves, which I always thought was a little bit overkill. If it was just that the dragon type wasn't very effective against fairy, it would be one thing, but straight up immune was kind of a lie in my opinion. I think that a move like this would be appreciated, with the only difference that instead of the 10% chance to freeze, I think it would make more sense if confusion was the status condition. I don't have a super strong reasoning for this other than I usually associate the dragon type with confusion because of outrage, but I could see a stat drop also being a good side effect for this move. Pokemon that could benefit from it are Pokemon like Hydreigon, Dragapult, Archaludon, as well as non-dragon types like Regieleki, Hoopa, Superior, or Zapdos. Basically any special attacker. I think they would be good candidates overall. I think it's a much needed move, particularly because I don't feel like there's an abundance of good dragon type moves that don't have a drawback. I know Scale Shot was added in Gen 9, and I know Outrage and Draco Meteor are good moves, but again, they have drawbacks, and other types have a higher number of moves without bad secondary effects. Like Water has Scald, Hydro Pump, Surf, Liquidation, etc., and Fire has Flamethrower, Fire Blast, Lava Plume, Heat Wave, Magma Storm, etc. Dragon types were mostly great in my opinion because dragon types themselves have pretty high stats, not because of the moves, but that's just me. I also think that an electro type version of freezai would be really cool. The electro type will always be a really relevant offensive typing, mainly because of Volt Switch, a move that helps define competitive singles as a whole. But the electro type will always be bullied by the ground type, which is, in my opinion, the second best Pokemon type. So I think that an electric type freeze-dry would be greatly appreciated. Name-wise, I don't know, maybe Galvanize, which is a synonym of Electrify. Like I said, names are my weak point, but that's not the point. Pokemon that could benefit from this, I think, is literally any electric type special attacker, which are almost every single electric type because there are almost no physical electric type Pokemon, and the ones that are do not have a great move pool. There should be a move that allows you to recover an item, sort of to combat knockoff, but I feel like that itself would be kind of lame, so I think the move should also recover, say, a fourth of your HP, with the secondary effect being that it recovers an item. I think this move would be great and a great addition to Pokemon now that knockoff is such a common move and hazards are more menacing than ever. This move would be interesting to me. If Sticky Hold was a more popular ability, then maybe I wouldn't have talked about this, but considering the fact that only 6 evolutionary lines get it, I feel like this move is kind of needed. I want to make clear that there's nothing inherently wrong with knockoff as a concept. I literally use the move, but again, when so little Pokemon can avoid this move, I think that would be useful to have a move to counteract it, especially now since it's more relevant than ever since it has such wide distribution in Generation 9. Ironic when you think of it that Gen 9 nerfed the distribution of Scald and Toxic, only to have knockoff not only get huge distribution, but also be controversial, especially when you take into consideration that while I believe Scald was unbalanced, yes, it's more problematic for physically offensive Pokemon than anything, and knockoff threatens literally almost everyone to huge degrees, and completely ruins and neuters certain Pokemon. And when you consider that the buff that knockoff got can also mean that it could be used purely for its offensive potential and not even its side effects, it becomes even more overwhelming. But anyways, that's a side tangent. But yeah, I think it would be nice to just even the playing field. I feel like this move should have limited power points considering that it would be potentially really fantastic. Perhaps maybe like 5. For this category of move, these types of move are almost always dark and normal types, like Taunt or Recycle. So that would be probably the best type for it. Name-wise, I don't know. Like I said, I'm bad at that. But yeah, I think it'd be a good idea for a move like this to exist. So that's it for now. Inevitably, there's going to be new moves added as generations go on. Most of them won't be actually useful, but that's okay, as some moves are simply cool in theory and not necessarily very helpful in practice, but that's just how it is. The only moves on here that I genuinely really want Game Freak to add is the one that counteracts knockoff. Is that because I've lost too many games because of Ho-Oh who got boots knocked off? Maybe, I don't know, I suppose you could say that's implied, but anyhow, new moves being added is one of the coolest things in new generations, because moves themselves have the power to elevate Pokemon themselves to different tiers. Overall, really looking forward to the new moves that will be added in the future.